Theme parks are designed for pure joy and escape. But for some people, they're a stage for the most baffling, entitled, and idiotic complaints you can imagine. From guests angry that magic isn't real, to people complaining that the Jurassic Park ride didn't use actual genetically engineered dinosaurs. These aren't just minor grievances, they're masterpieces of absurdity. We're counting down the 55 dumbest complaints about theme parks. 1. A teenager at Cedar Point learned a hard lesson about physics and personal responsibility. After her brand new iPhone flew out of her pocket during the Millennium Force roller coaster's 300-foot drop, she marched to guest services and demanded they shut down the ride immediately to go find it. When the staff explained that wasn't possible, and that she'd ignored multiple explicit warnings to secure all loose items, she accused them of orchestrating a scheme to steal guests' phones. 2. A family visiting a Six Flags park demanded a full refund for their day passes after riding the log flume. Their reason? They got wet. Not just a little splash, but properly soaked, as is the entire point of a ride that features a massive drop into a giant pool of water. They insisted there were no signs warning them about the possibility of water on a water ride, and that the park had therefore ruined their outfits and their entire day through gross negligence. 3. At Universal's Wizarding World of Harry Potter, a grown man approached a staff member in Diagon Alley and angrily asked where the real magic was. He wasn't talking about the special effects or the animatronics. He was genuinely furious that his brand new wand, which he had just purchased for $50, didn't actually allow him to cast spells on other guests. He accused the park of false advertising because the Wingardium Leviosa spell failed to make his wife float. 4. You might assume everyone understands dinosaurs are extinct, but apparently not at Universal's Jurassic Park. A guest filed a furious complaint because the dinosaurs were clearly animatronics. He argued that with the high ticket prices, the park should be using actual genetically cloned dinosaurs, not cheap robots. He felt completely scammed. Did this guy even watch the movies? Usually, when the dinosaurs are real, the guests don't survive long enough to file a complaint. 5. An unforgettable complaint was logged at a zoo and safari park where a visitor was deeply disappointed with the lion enclosure. He complained that the lions were unprofessional and lazy because they were just lying around sleeping in the sun. He expected them to be roaring, chasing each other, and generally putting on a show, like in the movies. What did he think he bought a ticket for? A Cirque du Soleil performance starring lions. 6. This one is a masterpiece of misplaced priorities. A guest at Disneyland complained that the Mickey Mouse-shaped pretzel he bought was geometrically imperfect. He claimed that one of the ears was approximately 10% smaller than the other, creating an unsettling asymmetry that ruined his immersive Disney experience. He even provided a hand-drawn diagram to illustrate the dimensional discrepancy to guest services, demanding a replacement pretzel and an apology for the emotional distress. 7. After taking their 5-year-old through a haunted house attraction during a Halloween event, a pair of parents filed a complaint that the experience was too scary. They argued that the jump scares were too sudden and the actors in monster costumes were too convincing, causing their child to cry. They seemed to have missed the giant signs outside that explicitly warned of intense scares, loud noises, and stated it was not recommended for young children. They wanted the park to tone it down. 8. In what might be the single worst financial decision of the day, a man cornered the character actor playing Goofy and began asking for detailed stock market advice. When the silent, costumed character could only offer a friendly wave and a hug, the man became visibly irritated. He later complained to management that the park's characters were unhelpful and lacked basic knowledge of current financial markets, which he considered a major flaw in the park's service. Seriously, have you ever tried asking a 6-foot-tall dog for investment tips? 9. A family on vacation from a northern state demanded a full refund from a Florida theme park because it was, in their words, unrealistically hot. They complained that the sun was too bright and the humidity was oppressive, and that the park should have done something to control the weather for the comfort of its guests. They were genuinely shocked to discover that Florida in July is, in fact, hot, and they felt the park should have warned them more clearly about the local climate. 10. Service animals are allowed in parks, but the definition of service animal gets stretched thin. A woman tried to bring her emotional support hamster onto a wooden roller coaster. When the ride operator stopped her, she threw a fit, claiming the hamster needed to experience the thrill to bond with her. She filed a discrimination complaint, arguing that her hamster had a right to ride the coaster just like the dogs. Imagine being hit in the face by a flying hamster at 50 miles per hour. 11. You go to see the nightly fireworks spectacular to be amazed, right? Well, one guest filed a formal grievance stating the fireworks were too loud and too bright. They claimed the explosions were startling and ruined their relaxing evening stroll. Apparently, they expected a silent, dim fireworks display, perhaps something that could be viewed comfortably through sunglasses and earplugs. It is truly mind-boggling how someone goes to a pyrotechnic show and is surprised by the pyrotechnics. 12. Safety rules are there for a reason, but not according to one mother at Six Flags. She screamed at a ride operator for refusing to let her toddler on a roller coaster that goes 70 miles per hour and flips upside down. Her argument? She promised to hold him really tight the entire time. She genuinely believed her maternal grip was stronger than the G-forces of a steel coaster loop. Would you trust your arm strength against gravity? I certainly wouldn't. 13. A mother filed a serious complaint against a character dining experience because Cinderella refused to tell her daughter where she bought her glass slippers. The mom wanted the actual brand name and store location so she could buy a pair. When the actress stayed in character and said they were a gift from her fairy godmother, the mom got angry and accused the park of gatekeeping fashion secrets. She was genuinely trying to shop for shoes in a fairy tale. 14. A guest at Disney's Animal Kingdom was horrified by the natural behavior of the primates on the Kilimanjaro safaris. She lodged a complaint stating that the baboons were indecent because they weren't wearing pants. She was offended by their brightly colored bottoms and felt the park should have dressed the wild animals in shorts to protect the innocence of the children. Imagine being the zookeeper assigned to put denim jeans on a baboon. 15. At Disney World, the character Gaston from Beauty and the Beast is famous for being arrogant, vain, and rude, exactly like he is in the movie. Yet a man complained to management that the actor was condescending and insulting after Gaston made a joke about the guest's muscles being smaller than his. The guest wanted the actor fired for bullying. Have we reached a point where people don't understand what acting is? 16. A tourist at Disneyland in California complained that the Matterhorn mountain structure was blocking their view of the sunset. They actually suggested that Disney should move the mountain to a different location so guests could enjoy the golden hour without obstruction. They seemed to think the 147-foot steel and concrete mountain was a movable prop on wheels, rather than a permanent landmark that has been there since 1959. 17. The Haunted Mansion is famous for its cobwebs and dust, which are meticulously applied by set designers to make it look old and spooky. One woman, however, was not impressed. She complained that the attraction was filthy and dusty, and clearly hadn't been cleaned in years. She offered to bring her own cleaning supplies to help the staff do their jobs properly. She missed the entire point of a haunted house so hard it's actually impressive. 18. We all hate walking, but one visitor took it to a new level. They complained that the theme park was too big and that it was unreasonable to expect guests to walk from one land to another. They suggested that the park should install moving walkways like at the airport, connecting every single ride and attraction. They called the current layout exhausting and inconsiderate. Seriously, how lazy do you have to be to complain about walking at a park that is literally designed for walking? 19. A guest at a park in Orlando was furious that he wasn't allowed to bring his own folding chair onto a roller coaster. He claimed he had back problems, and the ride seats were uncomfortable, so he wanted to set up his lawn chair in the coaster car for better lumbar support. When security explained that a loose lawn chair would become a deadly projectile at 60 miles per hour, he accused them of discriminating against people with bad backs. 20. During a daily parade, where floats and dancers fill the streets, a man complained that the parade was blocking the walkway. He was trying to cross the street and was outraged that he had to wait for Mickey Mouse and a giant dragon to pass. He yelled at a cast member, asking why they couldn't just pause the parade so he could cut through. Because obviously stopping a choreographed production with hundreds of performers is easier than him waiting 5 minutes. 21. You have to admire the creativity of this conspiracy theory. A guest had their churro snatched right out of their hand by an aggressive seagull near the pier. Instead of accepting that birds like easy food, they filed a formal complaint accusing the park of training the seagulls to steal from guests. They claimed it was a calculated corporate strategy to force people to buy second helpings to replace the stolen snacks. Yes, because training wild birds to commit petty theft is definitely a viable part of the business model. 22. The single rider line is a beautiful invention designed to fill empty seats and save time, but it completely baffled a family of 5. They hopped in the line to skip a 2-hour wait and then threw a massive tantrum when the ride operators tried to split them up into different vehicles. They screamed that they were a family and had to ride together. The staff explained the concept slowly, but they just kept yelling. What part of the word single is so hard to understand? 23. The Mad Tea Party is famous for exactly one thing: spinning until you can't walk straight. Yet a woman went to guest services to complain that the ride made her dizzy and nauseous. She was genuinely angry that a ride involving spinning teacups actually spun. She demanded compensation for her motion sickness and suggested the park should make the teacup stationary. That is literally just sitting in a cup. Why would you pay admission to do something you can do in your kitchen? 24. You have to feel for the ride operators who deal with this one. A man complained that the roller coaster was too fast and asked if they could slow it down for just his ride cycle. He suggested they use a variable speed dial so everyone could choose their own intensity. He didn't understand that roller coasters operate on gravity and momentum, not a dimmer switch on a wall. If they slowed it down, the train would stall in the middle of a loop and everyone would be hanging upside down until rescue arrived. 25. This might be the most self-centered complaint in history. A woman wrote a scathing review of Disney World stating that her vacation was ruined because there were too many children everywhere. She argued that the park should have mandatory adults-only days so she wouldn't have to deal with strollers and crying toddlers. Seriously, who goes to the most famous kid-friendly place on Earth and gets mad about seeing children? That's like going to the ocean and complaining that there's too much water. 26. When a roller coaster breaks down, it is usually for a safety sensor issue. But one man wasn't having it. He demanded that the operators let him ride the closed coaster anyway, claiming he was willing to take the risk. He actually tried to sign a waiver on a napkin. He couldn't grasp that the park wasn't going to risk a massive lawsuit and his life just because he didn't want to wait for maintenance to fix the brakes. Would you trust a napkin contract with your life? 27. Refillable souvenir cups are a great deal, but they usually only work at the park you bought them from. A guy tried to use a Six Flags cup at a Disney soda fountain. When the cashier told him he couldn't use a competitor's cup for a free refill, he caused a scene. He argued that soda is soda, and that the park was being petty. He genuinely couldn't understand why Mickey Mouse wouldn't want to honor a merchandise policy from a completely different company. That's like trying to return a Whopper to McDonald's. 28. Dining at the Coral Reef restaurant is a cool experience where you eat next to a giant aquarium. However, one family was traumatized. They complained that serving seafood in a restaurant with a view of live fish was cruel and insensitive. They claimed their children were crying because they thought they were eating the friends of the fish in the tank. To be fair, that is a little dark, but the menu was posted right outside the door. 29. The Jungle Cruise is legendary for its skippers telling intentionally terrible, corny dad jokes. It is the heart and soul of the ride. A man complained that the guide was unprofessional, and his jokes were groan-worthy and not funny. He suggested the park hire better comedians. He completely missed the fact that the bad jokes are the entire point of the attraction. It's a pun cruise, my friend, not an HBO comedy special. If you aren't groaning, you aren't getting your money's worth. 30. At the end of a long day, a man reported his car stolen to park security and even wanted to call the police. He was screaming that the park was liable for the theft. After a 40-minute panic, security drove him around and found his car exactly where he left it. He had just forgotten that he parked in the villain's lot, not the hero's lot. He didn't apologize, he just blamed the parking lot for looking too similar. We've all lost a car, but have you ever tried to arrest the parking lot for it? 31. Universal Studios employees deal with this confusing scenario constantly, but this one takes the cake. A furious family demanded a full refund because they spent the entire day searching for Cinderella's castle and couldn't find it. They were at Universal, not Disney. When the staff explained that Disney is a completely different company 10 miles down the road, the father accused them of hiding the castle behind a wall to trap tourists. 32. Height requirements are strictly enforced by physics, but one mom tried to negotiate with the laws of nature. She argued that her son, who was 3 inches too short for the mega coaster, should be allowed to ride because he was very mature for his age. She genuinely believed that his emotional intelligence would somehow prevent him from slipping out of the safety harness during a corkscrew. Since when does a high IQ protect you from gravity? 33. Most people complain about rude service, but one guest at a Disney hotel filed a formal complaint stating that the staff was too nice. She found their constant smiling and waving to be creepy, cult-like, and disingenuous. She claimed the excessive happiness made her uncomfortable, and she preferred the honest indifference of regular service workers. I guess some people just can't handle a world where everyone isn't absolutely miserable. 34. The Drinking Around the World showcase at Epcot is a popular challenge for adults, but one guy took it way too far. After consuming a strong beverage in all 11 countries, he got sick and was escorted out by security. He later emailed the park demanding reimbursement for his medical bills, claiming they overserved him and that the countries were placed too close together, effectively forcing him to drink faster than his body could handle. 35. During the holidays, Florida parks often use machines to blow soap bubbles that look like snow. It adds to the magic without the freezing temperatures. However, a visitor complained that the snow was fake and tasted like soap when he caught it on his tongue. He was insulted that the park didn't refrigerate the entire outdoors to produce real frozen precipitation. He wanted a winter wonderland, but he got a mouthful of bubbles and a bad attitude. 36. Top Thrill. Dragster was famous for launching riders at 120 miles per hour. A woman demanded a partial refund because the ride only lasted 17 seconds. She argued that waiting 2 hours for less than half a minute of ride time was a ripoff. She completely missed the point that the extreme speed is the attraction. If that ride lasted 5 minutes at that speed, you wouldn't be asking for a refund. You'd be asking for an ambulance. 37. A grown man in his 40s waited in line to meet Winnie the Pooh, only to leave the interaction in a total rage. He marched to guest relations to report a fraud. He had compared the autograph he just got with one he received 5 years ago, and the handwriting didn't match. He accused the park of using imposter bears. At what age do you think it becomes unacceptable to analyze the handwriting of a fictional stuffed animal? 38. It's a Small World is known for its catchy, repetitive song. But one guest reached their breaking point halfway through the water channel. They actually stood up in the moving boat and demanded the ride be stopped immediately so they could exit. When told to sit down for safety, they filed a complaint stating the song caused them severe psychological distress, and they should have been provided with an emergency evacuation route to escape the music. 39. A tourist visiting from a large city was deeply disturbed by the local wildlife. She complained that there were wild squirrels running loose in the park, begging for popcorn. She asked management why the animals weren't in cages or on leashes. She seemed to think that because she paid admission, every living creature inside the gates, including the random rodents, was a trained employee that had gone rogue. 40. Flash photography is forbidden on dark rides because it blinds other guests and ruins the special effects. Yet, a woman complained that a ride operator embarrassed her by announcing over the loudspeaker to please turn off the flash. She argued that she paid for her ticket and had the right to film her experience with full lighting, regardless of the fact that she was ruining the ride for the 100 other people in the boat. 41. Disney World is famous for its constant renovations, which unfortunately means construction walls. One guest was absolutely incensed that a plywood wall was blocking a specific angle of Cinderella's castle. He demanded that the construction crew take a break and remove the entire wall for 10 minutes so he could get his Instagram photo. When they refused, he asked if they had a portable green screen he could borrow to fake the background. I respect the dedication to the gram, but I don't think construction workers carry green screens in their tool belts. 42. Animal Kingdom is designed to be an immersive experience, simulating the wilds of Africa and Asia. However, one visitor lodged a formal complaint that the park smelled like animals. Specifically, she was offended by the manure smell near the elephant enclosure. She suggested that the park should use industrial-sized air fresheners, or Febreze the jungle, before opening the gates. It is a zoo. Animals poop. If you want a sterile environment, go to a hospital, not a safari. 43. The Pirates of the Caribbean ride features a famous scene where an animatronic dog holds the jail keys in his mouth while pirates try to lure him over. A man complained that the scene was frustrating and unresolved. He was genuinely upset that the dog never actually gave the keys to the pirates, no matter how many times he wrote it. He called it bad storytelling and wanted to know if there was a secret ending he was missing. My guy, they have been stuck in that jail cell since 1967. They aren't getting out. 44. There is a persistent urban legend that Disney parks have a giant invisible glass dome that covers the property to control the weather. It sounds crazy, but one woman believed it so wholeheartedly that she screamed at a guest relations manager during a thunderstorm. She demanded they turn on the dome immediately because her hair was getting frizzy. She wouldn't accept that it was just a myth. Seriously, be honest in the comments. Do you know anyone who actually believes the weather dome is real? 45. 3D rides like Star Tours require you to wear those goofy glasses to see the effects properly. A germophobic guest refused to put them on because she thought they were unsanitary, despite the cleaning bins. After the ride, she demanded a refund because the entire movie was blurry and out of focus. She argued that the park should have invested in naked eye 3D technology instead of forcing her to wear plastic glasses. She literally created her own problem and then asked for her money back to fix it. 46. The jumbo turkey legs at theme parks are a fan favorite, but one customer was suspicious. He filed a complaint claiming that the turkey leg he bought was too big to be from a turkey. He insisted it was actually an emu leg, or perhaps ostrich meat, and accused the park of mislabeling exotic animals. He claimed he grew up on a farm and turkeys don't have legs the size of a baseball bat. Would you even want to eat a turkey that had legs that big? It feels like you're eating a dinosaur. 47. A guest at a notoriously pristine theme park, famous for its obsessive cleanliness, actually complained that the park was too clean. He wrote that the lack of any litter, grime, or graffiti made the experience feel inauthentic and sterile. He argued that a real amusement park should have a bit of grit and character, and that the spotless pathways and freshly painted rails made him feel like he was in a dystopian movie rather than a place for fun. 48. Face characters like the Evil Queen or Cinderella's stepsisters are paid to be haughty and rude. It is literally their job description. But one guest filed a grievance against the evil queen for not smiling at her child. The guest said the character was cold and dismissive. The manager had to explain that if the evil queen started hugging toddlers and baking cookies, she wouldn't be very evil, would she? Some people just don't understand staying in character. 49. The Haunted Mansion uses a clever optical illusion called Pepper's Ghost to make transparent spirits appear in the ballroom. One highly superstitious guest, however, didn't know it was a trick. She sent a terrified letter to management claiming that a ghost from the ride had attached itself to her aura and followed her home. She demanded that the park pay for an exorcism to cleanse her house of the hitchhiking ghost. I guess that makes it the most successful haunted house in history. 50. Tomorrowland was built to represent the future that never was, but one teenager thought it was just false advertising. He complained that the area looked retro and old, and didn't feature any actual futuristic technology like flying cars or teleportation pads. He said it was misleading to call it Tomorrowland when it looked like 1995. He has a point, but unless the park invents time travel, we are stuck with the retro future aesthetic. 51. One of the most bizarre complaints came from a guest at a water park who was furious about the lazy river. He argued that the current was moving too slowly, and it was taking too long to complete a lap. He demanded that they install powerful jet engines to speed up the water flow so he could finish the relaxation ride faster. He completely failed to grasp the concept of the word lazy. He basically wanted a high-speed, stress-inducing river, which I think is just called drowning. 52. Universal Studios features actors dressed as classic movie monsters who roam the park. A woman approached Frankenstein's monster and asked him for directions to the nearest bathroom. When the actor stayed in character, groaning and moving stiffly instead of speaking English, she got offended. She reported him for being unhelpful and inarticulate. She expected the reanimated corpse of a monster to drop character and give her turn-by-turn navigation instructions. 53. Fanboy rage took a weird turn at Galaxy's Edge, the Star Wars-themed land. A furious guest demanded to speak to a manager because he couldn't find any merchandise featuring Captain Kirk or Spock. When the staff gently explained that those characters are from Star Trek, a completely different franchise, the man insisted that it's all the same space stuff and accused the park of having a limited inventory. Imagine being confident enough to argue with a nerd about space lore. 54. This one requires some serious mental gymnastics. A visitor at a water park, who was currently swimming in the wave pool, demanded a refund because it started raining. They argued that the rain was cold and annoying, and interfered with their enjoyment of being wet. The staff tried to explain that they were already submerged in water, but the guest insisted that pool water and sky water were completely different things, and the rain was ruining their swim. 55. A guest visited a theme park in Orlando during a hurricane warning. The park remained open for a few hours before closing for safety as the storm approached. The guest demanded a refund, not because the park closed, but because the hurricane didn't hit them directly while they were there. He argued that he paid for the extreme weather experience and felt cheated that the winds weren't stronger. He literally complained that a natural disaster didn't jeopardize his life enough. There you have it, 55 people who probably should have just stayed home on their couch. Which of these complaints made your brain hurt the most? Was it the woman who wanted to Febreze the jungle, or the guy who wanted to slow down gravity? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this dive into stupidity, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories that prove common sense isn't so common. See you next time.